I'm Sophia, 32, and I never imagined my first home purchase would tear my family apart. After years of saving every penny from my software engineering job, I finally bought my dream house, a charming 3-bedroom with a yard for my rescue dog Max. But instead of congratulations, my parents exploded in anger because I hadn't consulted them first. The shocking truth came out during a family dinner. They had already promised my sister Lisa, her husband Greg, and their 3 children that they could move in with me rent-free. Now I'm facing an impossible choice between my independence and my family ties. Let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe to hear how I stood my ground and why it cost me everything. Growing up in suburban Chicago, I was always the responsible daughter. My parents, Robert and Margaret Thompson, raised me and my younger sister, Lisa, with traditional Midwestern values. Dad worked as an insurance salesman, while Mom taught elementary school. They weren't wealthy, but we never lacked necessities. From an early age, the differences between Lisa and me were apparent. I was studious, practical, and independent. Lisa was sociable, creative, and relied heavily on our parents' support. Despite being only 2 years apart, we inhabited different worlds. I excelled academically, particularly in mathematics and computer science. My parents were proud but expected nothing less. When I received a partial scholarship to Northwestern University, they helped with expenses, but emphasized I would need to take out loans for the remainder. Education is an investment in yourself, Dad frequently reminded me. You need to have skin in the game. College was transformative. I worked part-time at the university's IT department while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. Summers were spent interning at tech companies, building my resume and networking. I graduated with honors and accepted a junior software engineering position at Tech Solutions, a growing company in downtown Chicago. Meanwhile, Lisa followed a different path. She attended community college sporadically, but never completed a degree. She met her husband Greg at 19 and married at 20. Their first child arrived shortly after. My parents fully supported her choices, helping with childcare finances, and eventually housing the young family in their basement when Greg struggled to maintain steady employment. My career advanced rapidly. I lived frugally in a small apartment, commuting 45 minutes each way to save money. Every bonus and tax return went directly into my savings account. My goal was clear: financial independence and homeownership before 35. My relationship with my family remained cordial, but distant. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were mandatory, and I attended despite my busy schedule. These gatherings increasingly centered around Lisa's growing family and their challenges. By the time I turned 30, Lisa had 3 children: Emma, age 10, Jack, age 7, and Mia, age 4. Sophia never has any problems, Mom would say proudly, yet dismissively, when relatives inquired about me. She's our rock. This label, the rock, followed me throughout my 20s. I was dependable, successful, and self-sufficient. What my family failed to recognize was that rocks don't have feelings or dreams of their own. Dating proved challenging with my work commitments and family obligations. Most relationships fizzled after a few months. My last serious boyfriend, Daniel, ended things after 2 years when he realized I wouldn't prioritize our relationship over my career ambitions. "You're amazing, Sophia," he said during our final conversation, "but I need someone who has room for me in their life." His words stung because they contained truth. I had compartmentalized my life so efficiently that I struggled to make space for emotional connections. My closest friend was my colleague Aisha, who understood the demands of our industry and respected my boundaries. After a particularly difficult project earned me a substantial promotion, I decided it was time to revisit my homeownership goal. At 32, I had saved enough for a 20% down payment on a modest home. The housing market in Chicago was competitive, but with my excellent credit score and stable employment history, I felt confident in my prospects. I began house hunting, secretly not sharing my plans with anyone except Aisha. This wasn't unusual for me. I'd always kept my personal affairs private, especially from my family, who tended to offer unsolicited advice. What I didn't realize was that this privacy would soon be interpreted as betrayal. The day I found my house remains vivid in my memory. It was a crisp Saturday in October, and I had arranged to view 5 properties with my realtor, Jessica. "This next one just came on the market yesterday," Jessica said as we pulled up to a colonial-style home in a quiet neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, recently renovated kitchen, and a fenced backyard. "It's at the top of your budget, but I think it's worth seeing." The moment I stepped through the front door, something clicked. Sunlight streamed through bay windows into a cozy living room with hardwood floors. The kitchen featured granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. Upstairs, the master bedroom had a small sitting area, perfect for my reading nook. But it was the backyard that sold me, spacious with mature trees and a small patio. I immediately envisioned morning coffee outdoors and a safe space for Max, the border collie mix I'd rescued 3 years prior. "What do you think?" Jessica asked, noticing my expression. "I want to make an offer," I replied without hesitation. Jessica smiled. "I had a feeling about this one. Let's move quickly. Houses in this area don't stay available long." That evening, I submitted an offer slightly above asking price with minimal contingencies. The sellers responded within hours. They had received multiple offers, but appreciated my strong financial position and flexibility on closing date. By Sunday night, my offer was accepted. The next morning, I called in late to work and met with a mortgage broker to finalize my loan application. Everything proceeded smoothly. My years of financial discipline were paying off. On Thursday evening, during our weekly video chat, Aisha could tell something had changed. "You're glowing," she observed. "Either you've met someone or that house hunting is going well." I couldn't contain my excitement any longer. "I'm buying a house. My offer was accepted, and if all goes well with inspections, I'll close in 30 days. "That's amazing!" Aisha exclaimed. "We need to celebrate this weekend. Dinner at Giordano's is on me." For the first time in years, I felt genuinely proud of myself. This achievement was mine alone, no family connections, no handouts, just determination and hard work. The home inspection revealed minor issues. Some electrical work needed updating, and the water heater was nearing the end of its lifespan. I negotiated a slight reduction in price, and the sellers agreed to replace the water heater before closing. As the closing date approached, I debated when to tell my family. Part of me wanted to wait until everything was finalized, avoid any potential jinxing. Another part feared their reaction. My parents had always expected consultation on major decisions, even as I entered my 30s. Ultimately, I decided to share the news at the upcoming Sunday dinner. I imagined their surprise would quickly turn to congratulations. Perhaps they would even be proud that I had achieved this milestone independently. The Sunday before my closing date, I arrived at my parents' house with a bottle of champagne. Lisa, Greg, and their children were already there, the kids playing loudly in the living room while the adults gathered in the kitchen. "What's the occasion?" Mom asked, eyeing the champagne. "I have some news," I announced, trying to contain my smile. "I bought a house. Well, technically I close on Friday, but everything's approved and ready to go." The room fell silent. Mom froze with a serving spoon mid-air. Dad's expression darkened. Lisa and Greg exchanged glances I couldn't interpret. "You bought a house," Dad finally said. "Without telling us?" "I wanted it to be a surprise," I explained, confused by their reaction. "It's in Oakwood Heights, about 20 minutes from here. 3 bedrooms, nice yard for Max." "3 bedrooms?" Mom interrupted. "Well, that's fortunate at least." Before I could respond, Dad's voice rose. "How could you make such a huge decision without consulting us first? We're your family." "I'm 32, Dad. I did my research, saved for years, and found a place I love. I didn't think I needed permission." "It's not about permission," Mom said sharply. "It's about consideration. Family decisions affect everyone." "This isn't a family decision," I countered, growing increasingly bewildered. "It's my house purchased with my money." Lisa cleared her throat awkwardly. "Maybe we should discuss this after dinner." "No," Dad insisted. "This needs to be addressed now. Sophia, your timing couldn't be worse. We've been planning for months." "Planning what?" I asked. The uncomfortable silence that followed told me whatever they had been planning involved me without my knowledge or consent. That Sunday dinner quickly descended into one of the most shocking confrontations of my life. As I stood in my parents' kitchen, champagne bottle still in hand, the truth began to emerge. Your sister's landlord is selling their building. Dad explained, his tone suggesting I should already know this. They need to be out by the end of the month. I looked at Lisa and Greg. Their apartment had always been problematic, overpriced, poorly maintained, and too small for their family of 5. But this was the first I'd heard about them having to move. I'm sorry to hear that, I said cautiously. Have you found a new place? Lisa stared at her plate. Greg shifted uncomfortably. Mom jumped in. That's what we've been trying to figure out for weeks, she said. Rents have skyrocketed, and with 3 children they need at least 3 bedrooms. On Greg's salary alone, it's impossible in this market. A sinking feeling grew in my stomach as the puzzle pieces began falling into place. We thought, Dad continued, since you were doing so well and living alone in that expensive apartment downtown, that you might be thinking about buying something bigger. Something with enough room for Lisa and her family. Temporarily, of course. My jaw dropped. You assumed I would buy a house for Lisa's family to move into. Not for them, Mom clarified, though her distinction seemed meaningless. With them. A family solution. We even discussed contributing to the down payment if you found something suitable. Which is why, Dad added, his anger returning, you should have talked to us before making such an impulsive purchase. Impulsive. The word struck me like a slap. There was nothing impulsive about my decision. I'd spent years saving, months researching neighborhoods, and weeks viewing properties. This was not an impulse buy, I said firmly. This was my life plan, and no one ever mentioned anything to me about Lisa needing housing. Greg finally spoke up. We didn't want to pressure you. Your parents thought it would be better coming from them when the time was right. The time was right weeks ago, Mom said pointedly, before you went house hunting. I took a deep breath, trying to process this revelation. So let me get this straight. Without ever discussing it with me, you all decided that I would buy a house big enough for Lisa, Greg, and 3 children to move into. And now you're angry because I bought something just for myself. When you put it like that, you make it sound unreasonable, Dad said defensively. Because it is unreasonable. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. I'm not responsible for housing my adult sister and her family. Lisa's eyes welled with tears. We wouldn't have expected you to support us financially. We would have contributed what we could. Which is what exactly? The question came out harsher than I intended. Greg, no offense, but you've changed jobs 3 times in the last 2 years. And Lisa, you haven't worked since Emma was born. I've been raising my children, Lisa shot back. Some things are more important than career advancement. The implication stung. According to my family's worldview, my professional success and financial independence were somehow character flaws, signs of selfishness rather than accomplishment. I never said they weren't, I replied. But my point stands. Your current rent is $700 in Mom and Dad's basement. My mortgage will be $2,400 a month. What exactly would your contribution be? No one answered. The truth hung heavily in the air. Their plan had never been about fair contribution. It had always been about leveraging my success to solve Lisa's problems. We're family, Mom finally said, as if those words explained and justified everything. We help each other. Help goes both ways, I countered. When have any of you considered what I might need or want? When have my life choices been respected instead of taken for granted? Dad's expression hardened. That's not fair, Sophia. We've always supported you. You've always expected me to succeed on my own while cushioning every setback Lisa has faced. There's a difference. Emma, Lisa's oldest, appeared in the doorway. Why is everyone yelling? It's nothing, sweetie, Lisa said quickly. Adult conversation. Go play with your siblings. After Emma reluctantly left, Greg attempted reconciliation. Look, we understand this comes as a surprise. Maybe we can discuss alternatives. Your new place has 3 bedrooms, right? perhaps just temporarily. No. My response was immediate and firm. That's not happening. I bought this house for myself. One bedroom is mine, one is my home office, and the third is a guest room. There is no space for 5 additional people. You'd turn away your own flesh and blood? Mom asked incredulously. Your nieces and nephew? I'm not turning anyone away from anything. I'm establishing boundaries about my own property. The conversation cycled through the same points for another hour. My parents became increasingly accusatory. Lisa oscillated between tears and passive-aggressive comments, and Greg attempted to play mediator while clearly siding with his wife. I remained firm despite mounting pressure from all sides. Finally exhausted and emotionally drained, I stood to leave. I'm going home. I close on Friday. You're all welcome to visit once I'm settled as visitors, not residents. If you walk out that door now, Dad warned, you'll regret it. I paused, searching his face for the father who had taught me to stand on my own 2 feet, who had insisted I take responsibility for my choices. I couldn't find him. The only thing I regret, I said quietly, is discovering that my independence is only valued when it benefits someone else. With that, I left the unopened champagne still sitting on the kitchen counter. The week following that disastrous Sunday dinner was one of the most stressful of my life. My closing was scheduled for Friday at 3 o'clock, but the excitement I had previously felt was now overshadowed by family tension. Monday morning, my phone exploded with text messages. Mom sent scripture about family obligations. Dad's messages were clipped and businesslike, suggesting we revisit the discussion with clearer heads. Lisa alternated between guilt-tripping and attempting to negotiate various living arrangements that might work for everyone. I responded minimally, focusing instead on my work and final preparations for homeownership. My team at Tech Solutions was in the middle of a critical project rollout, which provided a welcome distraction from personal drama. During lunch, I called Aisha and explained everything. That's completely out of line, she said after hearing about my family's expectations. They planned your life without even consulting you. Part of me wonders if I'm being selfish, I admitted. They're making me feel like I'm abandoning Lisa's children. Absolutely not, Aisha insisted. You're not responsible for housing your sister's family. That's boundary setting, not abandonment. Your parents created this problem by making promises on your behalf. Her validation helped, but couldn't completely erase my guilt. Years of family conditioning had taught me that being the responsible one meant solving everyone else's problems. Tuesday evening, my mother showed up unannounced at my apartment. She brought lasagna, her traditional peace offering, and asked to talk. I may have reacted too strongly on Sunday, she began once we were seated at my small dining table. But try to understand our position. Lisa and the children are in a desperate situation. I do understand that, I replied. What I don't understand is why this suddenly became my problem to solve without any prior discussion. Mom sighed. It wasn't sudden. Your father and I have been supporting them for years. Greg's construction work is seasonal at best, and childcare costs make it impractical for Lisa to work. We're getting older, Sophia. We can't be their safety net forever. So I'm the designated replacement safety net. Your family, she said simply, and you've been blessed with success. We talked in circles for an hour. Mom suggested I could delay moving into my new house and sublet it to Lisa's family while continuing to live in my apartment. When I pointed out the financial absurdity of paying both rent and mortgage, she suggested I move back home temporarily. This isn't a negotiation, I finally said. I'm not changing my plans. If Lisa and Greg need housing, there are options that don't involve taking over my new home. Like what? Mom challenged. They could look for housing further from the city where rents are lower. They could both get full-time jobs and arrange childcare. They could apply for housing assistance. The options aren't great, but they're the same options available to any other family in their situation. Mom left, disappointed, her lasagna barely touched. As I closed the door behind her, I felt a familiar weight of family expectations settling back onto my shoulders. Wednesday brought a new tactic. Lisa called, putting 10-year-old Emma on the phone. "Aunt Sophia," my niece said in a small voice. "Mom says we might have to split up if we can't find a place to live. Would Jack have to go to a different school?" My heart sank at this blatant manipulation. After assuring Emma that her family would stay together, I ended the call and immediately texted Lisa. "Don't ever use your children to manipulate me again." Her response was swift and defensive. "I'm not manipulating anyone. These are real consequences we're facing." By Thursday, the day before my closing, communication had devolved further. Dad left a voicemail suggesting that if I was determined to abandon my family responsibilities, I should at least provide financial assistance for Lisa's new housing. I didn't return his call. Instead, I focused on final preparations for moving day. My apartment lease ended in 3 weeks, giving me time to move gradually. I'd arranged for internet installation, scheduled furniture deliveries, and hired movers for the larger items. Friday morning, I took the day off work. My closing was scheduled for 3 o'clock, and Jessica had arranged for me to get keys immediately afterward. Despite everything, excitement bubbled up as I prepared to become a homeowner. At 11, my phone rang, Greg's number. Hesitantly, I answered. "Sophia, I want to apologize for how everything went down on Sunday," he began. "It wasn't handled well." His unexpected reasonableness caught me off guard. "Thank you for saying that. Look, I understand your position. It's your house and your life, but we really are in a tough spot." I remained silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Your parents suggested that maybe you could loan us the security deposit for a new place," he continued. "3,000 would cover first month and security. We'd pay you back in installments." So there it was. Not an apology, but another request. "Greg, I've already stretched myself financially with this purchase. I don't have extra cash right now." This wasn't entirely true. I maintained an emergency fund, but after the past week, I was unwilling to extend myself further. "Right," he said, disappointment evident. "Well, congratulations on the house." The closing went smoothly. As I signed document after document, a sense of pride and accomplishment washed over me. This was my achievement, earned through years of discipline and hard work. When the seller's agent handed me the keys, I felt a surge of emotion, pride mingled with defiance. That evening, standing in my empty living room, I made a difficult decision. I needed space from my family time to establish my new home as my sanctuary without guilt or pressure. I composed a group text to my parents and Lisa. "I've officially closed on my house today. I need some time and space as I settle in. I won't be attending Sunday dinner this week or next. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk again." Then I turned off my phone, opened a bottle of wine I had brought with me, and toasted my new beginning alone, but on my own terms. The first weekend in my new home should have been filled with excitement and celebration. Instead, I navigated a minefield of family tension while trying to establish my independence. After sending that group text Friday evening, I kept my phone turned off until Saturday morning, giving myself one night of peace in my new space. When I finally powered it back on, the notifications flooded in. 23 text messages, 11 missed calls, and 5 voicemails. Most were from my mother, growing increasingly frantic when I didn't respond immediately. Dad had called 3 times, but left no messages, his silent treatment tactic. Lisa had sent several texts, vacillating between anger and apparent concern for my well-being. "Are you seriously ignoring us now?" read one message. "The children were asking about you," stated another. I read everything but responded to no one. Instead, I called Aisha and asked if she could help with moving some of my smaller belongings from the apartment. "Absolutely," she agreed. "And I'm bringing housewarming champagne, the celebration you should have had with your family." While waiting for Aisha, I began planning where furniture would go, measuring spaces, and envisioning my future life here. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of the excitement that had initially accompanied my home purchase. Aisha arrived mid-morning with champagne as promised, and Chinese takeout for lunch. We spent hours transporting boxes from my apartment, arranging my home office, and discussing paint colors for the living room. "Have you thought about what you're going to do about Sunday dinner?" she asked as we collapsed onto my kitchen floor, surrounded by half-unpacked dishes. I'm not going, I replied firmly. I meant what I said in my text. I need space. And after that, this can't go on indefinitely. I sighed, leaning back against a cabinet. I know. But every interaction feels like they're trying to make me responsible for Lisa's housing situation. I can't keep having the same argument. Maybe you should talk to someone professional about setting boundaries, Aisha suggested. This pattern seems deeply ingrained. She was right. Throughout my life, I'd been cast as the family problem solver while simultaneously being criticized for my independence. The contradiction had never been so apparent as now. Sunday morning, I awoke to knocking at my front door. Through the peephole, I saw my father standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, expression grim. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but that felt cowardly. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. You weren't answering your phone, he said by way of greeting. I said I needed space. Space is a luxury when family is in crisis. He remained on the porch, making no move to enter. May I come in? Reluctantly, I stepped aside. Dad entered, surveying the half-unpacked boxes and sparse furniture with a critical eye. It's coming along, I said defensively. He walked to the living room windows, looking out at the backyard. Your mother is worried about you. I'm fine, just busy settling in. Lisa and the kids have to be out of their apartment by Friday. They're staying with us temporarily, but our house isn't set up for 3 children long term. I felt manipulated by this information, as if he expected me to suddenly change my mind when presented with a concrete deadline. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. But as I've said repeatedly, they cannot live here. Dad turned to face me. I raised you to value family above all else, to be responsible and caring. You also raised me to be self-sufficient and independent, I countered. You can't have it both ways, Dad. You can't tell me to stand on my own 2 feet and then criticize me when I do exactly that. This isn't about independence, it's about selfishness. The accusation stung deeply. It's selfish to want to live in the home I purchased with my own money, to have privacy and peace after working 60-hour weeks, to expect other adults to solve their own housing problems. When those other adults are your sister and her children, yes. We stared at each other at an impasse. The fundamental disconnect was clear. My parents genuinely believed my resources belonged to the family collective, while I saw them as the fruits of my individual efforts. I think you should leave, I said quietly. We're not done discussing this. Yes, we are. For now, at least. I asked for space and you showed up unannounced anyway. That doesn't demonstrate respect for my boundaries. Dad's expression hardened. Boundaries. That's therapist talk. In families, we don't need boundaries, we need commitment to each other. I disagree. And it's my house, so I get to decide who stays and for how long. Right now, I'm asking you to leave. He departed without another word, slamming the door behind him. I leaned against the wall, heart pounding, feeling simultaneously terrible and empowered. That evening, Mom texted, "Your father is very upset. Please call when you're ready to discuss solutions rationally." I didn't respond. Monday morning brought a return to work and blessed normalcy. My team was supportive of my move, and my boss granted me flexibility for the week to handle moving logistics. I threw myself into coding, grateful for problems that had clear solutions. During lunch, I researched family therapists, taking Aisha's suggestions seriously. I needed professional guidance navigating this situation without completely severing family ties or surrendering my boundaries. By Wednesday, Lisa's desperation reached new levels. She showed up at my workplace, unannounced, children in tow. "We need to talk," she said when I met her in the reception area. "And I wanted you to see who your decisions are affecting." The receptionist watched curiously. My colleagues passing by cast questioning glances. This public ambush was a new low. "This is completely inappropriate," I said quietly. "I'm at work." "Well, you're not answering calls or texts. What choice do I have?" Emma, Jack, and Mia stood uncomfortably beside their mother, clearly confused by the tension. I felt anger rising, but tempered it for the children's sake. Kids, it's nice to see you, I said with forced brightness. Would you like some sodas from the break room? Amy at the desk can show you where it is. After the receptionist led them away, I turned to Lisa. Never do this again. Using your children as emotional leverage is manipulative and unfair to me and to them. You're not giving me options. Lisa's voice rose. We're being evicted on Friday. Mom and Dad's house is too small for us long term. We have nowhere to go. Lower your voice, I hissed. This is my workplace. I don't care. This is my life, Sophia. My children's stability. Colleagues were openly staring now. I grabbed my purse from my desk and guided Lisa outside to the courtyard. Lisa, I understand you're in a difficult situation, but it is not my responsibility to house your family. That's cold, Sophia. Really cold. No, it's realistic. I've worked incredibly hard for what I have. I'm entitled to enjoy it. Lisa scoffed. You've always been selfish. Career first, fancy apartment, and now this big house all to yourself while your family struggles. The accusation was familiar, the same guilt trip my parents had deployed. But hearing it from Lisa crystallized something for me. You know what's actually selfish, I countered. Expecting others to solve your problems. Having 3 children without financial stability. Assuming your sister should sacrifice her hard-earned independence to accommodate your choices. Lisa's face flushed with anger. How dare you judge my children? They're a blessing, not a burden. I'm not judging your children. I love them. I'm judging your expectation that other people should rearrange their lives because of your parenting decisions. Some sister you are, Lisa spat. Blood means nothing to you. Blood isn't a blank check, Lisa. It doesn't entitle you to my house, my money, or my life. I returned to collect the children from the break room, gave them quick hugs and escorted everyone out. Back at my desk, I shook with adrenaline and emotion. This confrontation had forced me to articulate boundaries I'd been feeling but struggling to express clearly. That evening, I called the family therapist I'd researched and scheduled an appointment for Friday. Whatever happened next, I needed professional support navigating it. Thursday passed without family contact, the calm before the storm. I used the day to move more belongings to the new house and began to feel glimmers of the joy this milestone should have brought. Friday morning, a text from Mom arrived. Lisa and family moving to your Aunt Catherine's rental property in Springfield. 2-hour drive but affordable. Your choice has consequences. Sunday dinner still on. Attendance expected. The news brought mixed emotions, relief that Lisa had found housing, frustration at the continued guilt tactics, and sadness at the growing rift. The last line about attendance expected struck me as particularly tone-deaf given recent events. I replied simply, glad Lisa found a solution. I won't be at dinner as previously stated. Need more time. Later that day, during my therapy appointment, I broke down while describing the events of the past 2 weeks. The therapist listened attentively before offering perspective. What you're experiencing is a family system fighting to maintain its equilibrium, she explained. You've changed the dynamics by asserting independence, and they're pushing back to restore the old pattern, one where you sacrifice for others. Is it wrong to want my own space? I asked through tears. To enjoy what I've worked for? Absolutely not. Healthy families support individual growth while maintaining connection. Your family is struggling with that balance. We discussed strategies for maintaining boundaries while working toward reconciliation. The therapist suggested a temporary cooling-off period, followed by a mediated family discussion if everyone was willing. As I drove home afterward, I felt lighter, validated in my position, yet hopeful about eventually repairing relationships. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, I believed it might be possible. That weekend, I focused on making my house a home. I assembled furniture, hung artwork, and planted flowers in the backyard. Each small act of nesting reinforced that this space was mine, earned through years of discipline and hard work. Sunday evening, as my family gathered for dinner without me, I sat on my new patio, watching the sunset, a glass of wine in hand. Max lounged at my feet, content in his new territory. Despite the pain of family conflict, I felt a profound sense of peace, the satisfaction of standing my ground and honoring my own needs after a lifetime of putting others first. Tomorrow would bring new challenges in this ongoing family drama. But tonight, in this moment, I was exactly where I belonged. The Springfield solution for Lisa's family provided temporary relief from the immediate crisis, but the emotional fallout continued to ripple through our family. 2 weeks passed with minimal contact. I missed 2 more Sunday dinners, each absence widening the gap between us. My therapist assured me this space was healthy, necessary for establishing new patterns of interaction, but guilt lingered nonetheless. Lisa and her family moved to Aunt Catherine's rental property, a small 3-bedroom house in Springfield, about 100 miles from Chicago. The arrangement was less than ideal. Greg now faced a longer commute to his construction jobs, and Lisa complained about being isolated from friends and support systems. But the rent was manageable, and Catherine had agreed to a flexible lease without a security deposit. I learned these details not from my family directly, but from Aunt Catherine herself, who called me unexpectedly one evening. "I'm not taking sides," she clarified early in our conversation. "But I thought you should know that while I've provided housing, your parents are subsidizing most of the rent. They're stretching themselves thin financially." This information wasn't entirely surprising, but added a new dimension to my guilt. My parents were in their early 60s, approaching retirement age with limited savings. Supporting Lisa's family could jeopardize their financial security. "They didn't mention that to me," I said. "They wouldn't. Robert and Margaret have always been private about finances, but I'm concerned about their retirement." After our call, I sat in my home office staring at the family photo on my desk taken at Christmas 2 years ago, everyone smiling and unaware of the fractures to come. The complexity of the situation weighed heavily on me. While I remained firm that housing Lisa's family wasn't my responsibility, I wondered if there were other ways I could help without sacrificing my boundaries. The next day, I consulted my financial advisor about the possibility of contributing to Lisa's housing costs without directly involving myself in their living situation. We identified an amount I could afford monthly, less than I would have spent housing them, but still substantial enough to make a difference. However, I hesitated to make the offer immediately. My therapist had cautioned against rushing to financial solutions before addressing the underlying relationship dynamics. Money without boundary recognition would only reinforce unhealthy patterns. 3 weeks after moving into my new home, I decided it was time to reconnect with my parents. I called on a Tuesday evening, half expecting voicemail. Mom answered immediately. "Sophia," she said, her tone cautiously neutral. "We were wondering when we'd hear from you." "I've needed time to process everything," I explained. "But I miss you and Dad." A pause. "We miss you too, despite our disagreements." We arranged for lunch that Saturday at a restaurant neutral territory where our conversation would be constrained by public setting. I suggested meeting just the three of us initially, without Lisa's family, to focus on repairing our primary relationship first. Saturday arrived with anxiety fluttering in my stomach. I arrived early, securing a corner table with some privacy. When my parents walked in, the sight of them affected me more than anticipated. Dad had lost weight and Mom's hair seemed grayer than I remembered. Greetings were awkward, half-hearted hugs and tentative smiles. We ordered drinks and studied menus in silence until Dad finally spoke. "Your house looks nice from the outside. I drive by occasionally." The admission that he'd been monitoring my home from afar was both touching and unsettling. "You could have come to the door," I offered. "I would have shown you around." "Didn't want to intrude after you were so clear about needing space." Progress, albeit small. He had respected a boundary even while testing its edges. We made small talk through appetizers, my work project, Dad's garden, neighborhood events. The unspoken tension remained, but we navigated around it carefully. When our entrees arrived, Mom finally broached the subject. "Lisa and the children are settling in Springfield. It's been an adjustment. Aunt Catherine mentioned that. Also that you're helping substantially with their rent." My parents exchanged glances. "Catherine shouldn't have shared that." Dad said stiffly. She's concerned about your retirement planning. So am I. Mom sighed. We're managing. Family helps family. I agree with that principle, I said carefully. Which is why I'd like to contribute to Lisa's housing costs monthly. Not as much as I would have spent if they lived with me, but enough to ease your burden. Their surprise was evident. Mom's eyes widened, and Dad set down his fork. That's unexpected, he said finally. My boundaries about my home remain firm, I clarified. But I do want to help in ways that work for everyone. What changed your mind? Mom asked. Nothing changed my mind about my house. That was never negotiable. But I've had time to consider other solutions that respect both my independence and our family bonds. Dad nodded slowly. It's a start. We discussed logistics. I would send money directly to Aunt Catherine rather than through my parents or Lisa, avoiding potential conflicts about how it was used. The conversation then shifted to deeper waters. I need to express something clearly, I said. I felt deeply hurt and disrespected by how this situation unfolded. Making plans involving my resources without consulting me was inappropriate regardless of family ties. Mom began to defend their actions, but Dad surprised me by placing a hand on hers, stopping her. We handled it poorly, he acknowledged. We assumed rather than asked. That was wrong. His admission stunned me into momentary silence. Dad rarely admitted mistakes. I appreciate hearing that, I managed finally. That doesn't mean I fully agree with your position, he continued. I still believe family obligations run deeper than you seem to think, but we should have approached you differently. It wasn't complete understanding, but it was progress and acknowledgement of my autonomy, even while disagreeing with my choices. How do we move forward? Mom asked. Sunday dinners won't be the same without you. I'd like to attend again, I said. But things need to be different. No guilt trips, no passive-aggressive comments about my life choices, and respect for the decisions I make about my own home and finances. That seems reasonable, Dad said after a moment. We can try. We finished lunch on better terms than we'd begun, though fragility lingered in our interactions. I agreed to return to Sunday dinner the following week, with the understanding that Lisa and I would need our own conversation before then. That conversation happened Wednesday evening. Lisa called while I was making dinner. Mom says you're coming on Sunday, she began without preamble. Yes, I thought we should talk before then. About what? How you abandoned us when we needed you most. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my therapist's advice to stay calm and focus on I statements rather than accusations. I understand you're still angry, but I'd like to find a path forward that respects both our positions. Lisa scoffed. Easy for you to say from your big empty house. Lisa, I'm trying here. I've arranged to contribute to your rent monthly, not because I owe it to you, but because I care about you and the kids. This information clearly caught her off guard. Mom and Dad didn't mention that. I just discussed it with them on Saturday. The money will go directly to Aunt Catherine. Silence stretched between us. When Lisa spoke again, her tone had softened slightly. The kids miss you, especially Emma. She keeps asking why you're mad at us. I'm not mad at the children, I clarified. And I miss them too. Maybe we could arrange a visit soon. They could see my new house. That might be nice, Lisa admitted reluctantly. They'd love to see where Max lives now. By the time we ended our call, tentative peace had been established. Not forgiveness exactly, but a willingness to move beyond the immediate conflict. Lisa had even laughed when I described my disastrous attempt at assembling a bookshelf alone, a small moment of normalcy in our strained relationship. Sunday dinner proved less difficult than anticipated. My parents made visible efforts to respect our new boundaries. Lisa and Greg brought the children who were excited to see me after weeks of separation. 10-year-old Emma proudly showed me her school project, 7-year-old Jack described his new friend in Springfield, and 4-year-old Mia simply wanted to sit on my lap during dessert. Watching the children adapt so resiliently to their new circumstances eased some of my lingering guilt. Kids were remarkably adaptable when surrounded by love regardless of housing arrangements. After dinner, Lisa pulled me aside as I prepared to leave. Springfield isn't so bad, she admitted quietly. The schools are good. Housing is affordable. Greg's even found steady work with a local contractor. I'm glad to hear that. It's not what we planned, but, she shrugged, maybe it's what we needed. Independence. The irony wasn't lost on me. My fight for independence had inadvertently pushed Lisa toward finding her own. Perhaps this crisis had forced growth for all of us. 1 month after moving into my new home, I finally hosted my first family gathering, a housewarming barbecue in the backyard. Watching my nieces and nephew play with Max on the lawn, my parents relaxing on the patio furniture, and even Lisa admiring my kitchen renovations, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Our family would never be the same after this conflict. Old patterns had been disrupted, uncomfortable truths revealed, buried resentments surfaced. But perhaps what emerged from the wreckage would ultimately be healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation, support offered freely rather than extracted through guilt. As I grilled burgers and listened to my family's conversation flowing around me, I realized that standing firm on my boundaries hadn't destroyed my family connections as I'd feared. It had transformed them. The relationships felt more authentic now, stripped of pretense and unspoken expectations. My 3-bedroom house remained mine alone, a sanctuary I'd earned through years of discipline and hard work. But it was also a gathering place where family was welcome on terms we all understood and respected. That night, after everyone had left and I was cleaning the kitchen, my phone pinged with a text from Dad. Proud of your home and what you've built for yourself. Thanks for sharing it with us today. Simple words that would have seemed unremarkable before our conflict, but now carried profound significance. My parents were beginning to see me as an individual with valid needs and boundaries, not just as a resource for solving family problems. I took my wine glass to the patio and sat looking at the stars. Max curled at my feet. The journey to this point had been painful, but necessary. In standing up for myself, I hadn't lost my family. I had redefined our relationship on healthier terms. Some distances, I reflected, needed to be created before genuine closeness could develop. Sometimes saying no was the most honest form of love, both for others and for oneself. 6 months after moving into my home, life had found a new rhythm. The acute family crisis had evolved into a different kind of relationship, one with clearer boundaries and more authentic communication. While things weren't perfect, they had stabilized into a workable new normal. Lisa and her family were thriving unexpectedly in Springfield. Greg had secured permanent employment with a construction company, and Lisa had started part-time work at a local boutique now that Mia was in preschool. Their financial situation remained tight, but the lower cost of living made it manageable, especially with my monthly contribution. Our relationship had slowly mended. Initially stiff and formal, our interactions gradually warmed as mutual respect replaced resentment. The physical distance actually helped when we saw each other. It was intentional rather than obligatory, making our time together more meaningful. My parents had adjusted to the new family dynamics, though not without occasional lapses into old patterns. Dad sometimes made pointed comments about my empty house, and Mom still referenced Lisa's struggles when discussing my career success. But these moments became less frequent as they witnessed both Lisa's growing independence and my consistent support from a distance. Sunday dinners evolved into twice-monthly family gatherings that alternated between my parents' house and mine. When hosted at my home, I took pride in creating a welcoming space that remained distinctly mine. The 3rd bedroom had become a combination guest room and craft space where my nieces and nephew could work on projects when visiting. My professional life flourished with the stability my new home provided. Tech Solutions promoted me to lead developer, recognizing my contributions to several successful projects. The home office I had insisted on preserving proved essential for late-night coding sessions and weekend work sprints. One Wednesday evening in early spring, I received an unexpected call from Lisa. "Are you sitting down?" she asked when I answered. "Should I be?" I positioned myself on the living room sofa, concerned by her tone. "I got a job offer, a real one with benefits and everything." "Lisa," That's fantastic. Tell me about it. Remember how I used to do bookkeeping for Dad's friend's landscaping business before Emma was born? Well, I've been taking online courses to update my skills. A local accounting firm needs an administrative assistant with basic bookkeeping knowledge. It's entry level but full time with health insurance. The excitement in her voice was palpable. This wasn't just about income, it was about identity and purpose beyond motherhood. I'm so proud of you, I said, meaning it completely. When do you start? 2 weeks. We need to figure out after school care for the kids, but Aunt Catherine knows a reliable sitter in the neighborhood. We talked for nearly an hour longer than any conversation we'd had since the housing conflict. As Lisa shared her nervousness about returning to professional work and her hopes for advancing within the company, I recognized something familiar in her ambition. Perhaps we weren't so different after all. None of this would have happened if we'd moved in with you, Lisa admitted near the end of our call. I'd have fallen back into depending on everyone else. Springfield forced me to step up. Her acknowledgement stunned me. I never wanted to cause hardship for you and the kids. I know that now. At the time it felt like rejection, but honestly, it was probably the push we needed. After we hung up, I sat processing our conversation. The crisis that had nearly destroyed our relationship had ultimately catalyzed growth for Lisa that might never have happened otherwise. My refusal, painful as it was, had created space for her to develop capabilities she hadn't known she possessed. The following Sunday dinner at my parents' house had a celebratory atmosphere. Lisa shared her job news, and even my parents seemed genuinely proud rather than concerned about childcare arrangements. Greg discussed plans to enroll in evening classes at the local community college, working toward a contractor's license. Springfield's growing, he explained. Lots of construction opportunities if I have the right certifications. As dinner concluded, Dad pulled me aside while Mom and Lisa cleared dishes. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. A real one, not just the half acknowledgement I gave at that restaurant months ago. I waited, giving him space to continue. I was wrong about the house situation. Not just how we handled it, but the entire expectation. He glanced toward the kitchen where Lisa was laughing with Mom. Look at her now. She's standing on her own feet for the first time in her adult life. She's always had capabilities, I said. She just needed the opportunity to discover them. Dad nodded. Sometimes helping means not helping. That's a lesson I was slow to learn. He placed a hand on my shoulder. You stood your ground when it would have been easier to give in. I respect that even if I didn't show it at the time. His words healed something deep within me, a need for paternal approval I hadn't fully acknowledged. Throughout my life, I'd sought validation through achievement and responsibility. Now, ironically, I'd gained his deepest respect by refusing a responsibility he'd tried to place on me. Summer brought new developments. My parents decided to sell their house and purchase a smaller single-level home closer to Springfield. We're not getting any younger, Mom explained. The stairs are becoming difficult for your father, though he won't admit it. And being closer to the grandchildren makes sense for the future. Their decision marked a significant shift in family dynamics. For decades, the family home in Chicago had been our anchor, the gathering place that pulled us all back regardless of where life took us. Now my parents were choosing to relocate near Lisa rather than expecting her to return to them. The decision to sell also revealed financial realities my parents had kept private. The housing market had appreciated significantly since they purchased 30 years ago, and the sale would substantially bolster their retirement savings. The smaller home near Springfield cost less than half of their Chicago property's value. We should have downsized years ago, Dad admitted during a private conversation while we sorted through attic belongings. Pride kept us in a house too large for our needs. Another mistake I made, thinking the family home had to stay exactly the same forever. As summer transitioned to fall, my life settled into comfortable patterns. Work remained challenging but rewarding. My home became truly mine as I completed renovation projects and landscaping that reflected my personal style. I even started dating again. Nothing serious but enjoyable connections that had been impossible during the height of family drama. Lisa called one evening in late September with news that brought our journey full circle. "We're looking at houses," she said. "Nothing fancy, but with both of us working, a mortgage makes more sense than renting long term." "That's a big step," I replied. "How's the market in Springfield?" "Affordable. We found several options within our budget. Actually," she hesitated, "I was wondering if you might help us navigate the process. You seemed to know what you were doing when you bought your place." The request touched me deeply. After everything we'd been through, Lisa was acknowledging my expertise and seeking my guidance rather than my financial support or physical space. "I'd be happy to help," I said. "Should I come down this weekend?" "That would be perfect. The kids would love to see you, and we have 3 properties we're considering." That weekend visit to Springfield became the first of many collaborative family projects. I helped Lisa and Greg assess properties, connected them with my mortgage broker, and shared lessons from my own home buying experience. When they closed on a modest 3-bedroom ranch in November, I gave them a gift basket filled with household essentials and a framed photo of their family standing in front of their new home. By Christmas, our family had transformed. My parents were settled in their new, smaller home 10 minutes from Lisa's family. Lisa and Greg were establishing themselves professionally while creating a stable home for their children. And I remained in my Chicago house, still fiercely independent, but no longer isolated from family connections. For the holiday, everyone gathered at my home, a symbolic choice that acknowledged both my boundaries and my willingness to share my space on my terms. As we exchanged gifts around my living room tree, I reflected on the painful journey that had brought us to this healthier place. The crisis had forced each of us to grow in unexpected ways. Lisa and Greg discovered self-sufficiency they hadn't known they possessed. My parents learned to respect adult children's autonomy, and I learned that standing firm on boundaries didn't mean sacrificing family connection, it meant redefining it on more authentic terms. After dinner, as we gathered on the patio despite the December chill, Dad raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, "and to Sophia, whose strength and determination created positive change for our entire family, even when we fought her every step of the way." The acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. After a lifetime of being valued primarily for what I could provide others, I was finally seen and appreciated for who I was, someone with legitimate needs and boundaries of her own. Later, as Lisa helped me clean the kitchen, she asked quietly, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd given in? If we had all moved in here together?" I considered the question seriously. I think we would have fallen into old patterns. You and Greg might never have found your independence. Mom and Dad would have postponed their downsizing, and I would have grown increasingly resentful about sacrificing the life I worked so hard to create. Lisa nodded. "Sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones. I didn't understand that a year ago." As my family departed that evening, parents to their new, accessible home, Lisa and Greg to their first owned property, I stood in my doorway watching them leave, each heading to spaces that truly suited their needs rather than makeshift arrangements born of dependency. My 3-bedroom house remained mine alone, except when family visited on mutually agreed terms. The boundaries I had fought so hard to establish had ultimately freed all of us to create more authentic lives, separate but connected, independent but supportive. Sometimes the most loving act is saying no when everyone expects yes. Sometimes creating distance is necessary before genuine closeness can develop. And sometimes what feels like family betrayal becomes the catalyst for family transformation. That night, as I locked my door and settled on the sofa with Max beside me, I felt profound gratitude for the painful journey we had navigated. The house around me wasn't just a structure of wood and stone, it was a symbol of boundaries, honored independence respected, and relationships rebuilt on stronger foundations. What happened to you when family expectations collided with personal boundaries? Did you stand your ground or give in? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Also, if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to set healthy boundaries in their own life. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes saying no is the most authentic form of love, both for others and for yourself.